Welcome, everybody, to today's expert interview. We have none other than Brandon Green here, CEO of Alchemy of Money, an accounting firm. You know, I know everyone loves to talk about money, but nobody likes to talk about the accounting side of it, except Brandon. And he's also been in KW for eons. You've been a master faculty for how long, Brandon?
10 years at least, master faculty. Yeah.
Long time. So
Yeah.
OP has run a large team. Like Brandon is in the thick of it. And what I want to start with today, as we get through this, is Brandon, how did you end up being the CEO of an accounting firm coming from real estate? I think that's important
Um,
perspective for everyone to kind of understand here.
you know what, Liz? I wake up sometimes and ask that very question myself. It is quite ironic. It's growing my business, especially in the early years. Finances were tough, and I got like a $500,000 in debt with the IRS. And it was a painful experience, which I remember it was John Prescott, great coach. He's like, well, if you want to learn it, you better teach it. So I started teaching agent financials to improve myself. Now, fast forward many years later, it's my passion. And I decided a few years ago that enough people needed help that I should launch a company specifically helping people do this. It was the kind of company I wish had been around when I needed help. So that's part of the irony, I think, of life's journey, right? Your biggest need sometimes becomes your biggest opportunity.
Yep, that is how it happens, right? You got to master it. And then once you master it, you're like, wait, I can help
Hey,
people. I
I
can
can
help
help.
people like me. Why wasn't there somebody to help me?
Yes.
So I think it's pretty awesome.
Yes.
Anyways, for the rest of you, we are here today to have a conversation about money, about accounting. And we're not just talking about the money we make today, but it's how do we actually transition that money into something that works for us? All right. One of the things when we asked Brandon about what's important to you to talk about this today, he said, you know, we see real estate agents all the time that are out helping people and selling houses and doing this and on the operations side as well. And yet they're not taking advantage or they're not even able because of their financial situation or just the way they're managing their money, they're not
Yeah.
actually even able to take advantage of some of these amazing situations of investing, the tax
Yeah.
benefits, and
Yes.
creating this long-term wealth. And so that's ultimately why we're here today. So, Brandon, I'm going to let you kind of take it from here and I'll ask you questions and we'll dig deeper as we
Okay.
go.
Yeah. So I love that start. I distinctly remember this was maybe 4 or 5 years in the business. I had a $4 million listing in DuPont Circle. It was the highest price listing I'd had at that time. It was a really amazing entrepreneur, and I helped him sell that property. But I remember thinking at that time, I'm like, gosh, I want to own that property. I don't want to just broker the deal. I actually want to own the asset. And that started me off on the journey, which really informs our conversation today, which is we are all involved in such remarkable transactions with people. We help people at the center of sometimes their most important thing in their whole life to move a piece of real estate up or down. And yet we can't often participate at that level. And so, what do we as agents need to do to be in a position to own and buy and invest in these incredible assets that we actually help broker? So that's, I think, where I'd like to just start and frame the conversation. If we were going to talk about, the nuances of accounting, I'm not sure how many people are going to be around, but
We'd lose everybody. They're
there
dropping
goes
like
half the
flies
audience.
if that
Right.
happens.
But what are the things that we're noticing at Alchemy, agents who are succeeding in this vein actually doing? And I got 5 specific ones, Liz, I want to go through today. So,
So with that, I want to add something in here.
yeah,
I've
please.
got multiple clients that work with Brandon and his company and getting their books in order. And I'll tell you, even those that are the most thorough on their books, like his company has taken them and changed them into something that's like, oh, this is amazing, right? And
Yeah,
that's thorough people. Why? Because generally, as rainmakers and as even as team members, right? Like our team members, it's not your skill set to do this.
yeah,
It's not your forte, and it's certainly not where most of you are going to make your money. Now,
right,
Brandon has transitioned to that to be where it's his company now, and this is
right.
something that they do. But understand for most of you on here, it's even if you're like, well, my books are pretty solid and pretty good. I'll tell you, I've seen this man work some magic on some books, even ones
Yeah,
that were already good and ones that were a hot mess express, right? Like, so no
yes.
matter how bad it is, he's going to kill me for saying this, but no matter how bad it is, Brandon can help you.
Well, If people were organized, there would be no alchemy company.
That's
So
fair. All right. So take us through these five, Brandon. Let's go. So what's
yeah,
number
number
one?
number one is people that are succeeding here, they are prioritizing their financial team. And what I mean by this is one of the very first deals I had a first-time homebuyer client that was like, "Hey, go find me a cheap home inspector." And I was like, "Oh, okay, all right, great." I found them a cheap home inspector. We get down to the table, doing the review, and the home inspector says, "Oh, I got good news and bad news." And we're like, "Oh, what's the good news and bad news?" He goes, "Well, the bad news is you need a new roof." And we were like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I saw the commission dollars evaporate, which I happened to need at the time. My poor, first time home buyer couple. Then he leans in, he goes, but not for 30 years. Ha ha ha. And he like had this very uncomfortable chuckle. Well,
Wow, that's a pretty bad home inspector joke.
uh, horrible. Funny now, kind of, but at the time it was terrible. And I
Right.
ended up losing that client. Home buyer, first time home buyer, down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Why, if he's like, gone. But I learned a very valuable lesson, which is if I was going to build a great base of production, a great team, I needed a great team around me. I needed an amazing home inspector, title company, lender, right? And so I put a lot of time and effort into that. What I would ask people who are listening to ask themselves is how much time and effort are you putting into your own financial team? Your bookkeeper, your CPA, your estate attorney, your banker, financial planner, or are you just accepting the fact that you can't get a hold of your CPA during tax season because they just won't call you back? So number one is people who are doing well, they are prioritizing for themselves, they're putting their own oxygen mask on and putting real time and effort into building an amazing world-class financial team. Often that means swapping people out that have been with you for a long time, but no longer are a fit for you because you have grown. So that's my number one is it's a who, right? And putting the time and effort needed to get that right group of people to support your financial world.
Well, and it's interesting, especially like let's look at it from a rainmaker standpoint, right? I see a lot of profit and loss statements. I see a lot of ones that are done by the rainmaker on their
Yep.
own software. I see a
Yep.
lot of ones that are done by the accountant since they were 18 that to do their taxes and go through that. And then I've seen ones that you guys have done. And it's like it's astonishing to see the difference of somebody who understands real estate accounting, first of
Yeah.
all.
It's
It is
different.
it's
Different.
very different. Our cost of
Yes.
sales, the way we break
Yes.
things down, and the ability to actually pull insights
Yes.
out of the way you run reports versus the way that your dad's accountant from 1995 that
Yep.
you started with when you were 17 runs their books. It's different. You actually gain very knowledgeable insights from somebody who's a professional in the field of accounting and the field that you are a professional in of real estate.
Yes. Yes.
It looks different.
Most people have what I call for compliance services only books, which is it's what your CPA needs to file your taxes, but it's more or less totally useless to you as a business owner. And every business owner realizes at some point, if they're going to have and achieve their financial goals, that has to evolve to business oriented financial reporting. Very different. And that is part of the journey, I think, that people are generally on when they say, I'm going to see how I can make this better.
All right.
All
Number
right.
two.
Number two.
What's number two?
So one thing I love is setting really big goals, right? I love going to classes or like $50 million net worth. What are we going to do? Woo! The challenge is that, well, that's great and maybe inspiring, but what are you going to do today? So, number two is breaking big wealth goals into small steps and really applying some of the principles from the one thing and saying, okay, 10 years from now, you want to do this. 5 years from now, then you need to do this. 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, 3 months. What do you need to do today?
The two
So,
inch domino. The
two
two
inch
inch
domino,
domino.
the micro mini step. People don't build great wealth in short periods of time. It takes a long time, which means you have to have a lot of micro steps lined up relatively sequentially to actually make this work. So I think a question I have for anybody listening today is what is your next step this next quarter to take you closer to your financial goal? That assumes you have a defined financial goal, right? Maybe that's where you start. But if you do, what's the time frame you're trying to achieve that in? And can you actually engineer that into some steps you need to take in the next 4 to 12 weeks? People that are doing well do this, and they do it relatively well and take small steps over time.
I think that's so important when we look at the small steps, because you're right. It's like I mean, I am flooded with advertisements and ads and companies and classes and books and emails about building this massive thing of wealth. And while we want everybody in our world to be ridiculously wealthy and to have everything you've ever dreamed of, nobody got there by just having the big dream. They got there
No.
by taking the first few small steps. And it's
Yes.
interesting because I work with a lot of folks that they don't know what that first step is. But I'll tell you the first step, and this is going to pain a lot of you. The first step is actually knowing your numbers,
Yes, it
right?
is.
It's knowing those financial numbers. And if you don't have good reports, you don't actually know those financial numbers, right? Then it's just a big heap and pile of problems over there that we don't even want to look at.
There's no way around it. It is, it's, you have to go through this process one way or the other to learn what your financial numbers are and what the levers are that can improve them or not. And that is, like you said earlier, people generally don't come to the table with this skill set. This is a learned skill, just like you didn't come to the real estate business with a listing presentation. Like you learned it and you learned to get better at it over time. This is the same idea, certainly.
Yeah. Business owners measure results and adjust activities. So whether
Yes.
you're the rainmaker or the buyer's agent or the director of operations, think of it like this is your business, right? Your wealth is your own little business. So it doesn't matter if you actually own the team, right? It's this is your numbers. These are your metrics. This is your wealth business. And I think that's important. Know the numbers, measure results, adjust activities, but you got to have good reporting for that. All right. Number
Yes.
3.
Number three is managing your taxes proactively.
Ugh.
The truth is, if you don't have and you're not on top of your taxes, you're not going to reach your goals. Like it just isn't possible. The fees associated with being behind on your taxes wipe away any possible interest gains you might have in investments. So people sometimes think, well, I'll sell another house out of, or I'll invest my way out of tax reactivity, or at worst, real problems. The truth is, you can't. Just as a short example, the penalty for not paying your taxes on time is the 10-year treasury rate plus like 3.5% compounded daily. So it's like a loan shark. So you must get on it. And I'll give you a specific technique is the tax planning needs to happen in the summer of the current year. One of the big things we see at Alchemy is people come to us in Q1 and they're like, "Tell me what I can do to save on my taxes last year." And I'm like, "Hey, did you just hear yours? Like last year? Like last year's over? We can help you save on your taxes this year. Oh, by the way, we need last year's tax returns. Oh, those won't be ready until October." Well, that's a problem. Because if we don't start doing any planning for this year until October, it's already too late again. So
Already, yeah, you're already behind.
you're already behind. So getting ahead on taxes is actually very hard because we think of taxes in arrears about 18 months. But you actually need to think about taxes ahead about 18 months, which means you need to have all your information to your CPA in Q1. All of your taxes need to be done no later than Q2. Your planning needs to happen in Q2. So you have Q3 and Q4 to make adjustments and make payments. That is easy to say, but actually very hard to do. But it's a must do in order to work on achieving great financial success. Not to mention sleep well at night. Like, not even talking about great financial success. I'm like, the worst thing you can do, and believe me, I know, is to just have the IRS hanging over your head. So, getting a handle on this is a critical thing, and people who are doing well have done that. And in some cases, it does take quite a bit of time to do so.
Well, and it's a new habit, it's a new mindset to look at it like that. And so many accounting firms and so many people that do our taxes, they're like, "Oh, you're self-employed. I went ahead and automatically filed the extension. We'll just get it
Yeah.
in October." And they get us into this trap, and been on that trap. Like I get it, right? They get us
Yes.
into this trap, and we're like, "I'm busy. I'm just going to go. Like, I'm going to keep doing my business." And we trust people who don't necessarily, I don't think is intentionally are hurting
No.
us. It's just that they don't necessarily have the skill set to actually be a strategist at the same time as a bookkeeper.
That's
And
a good
and that's a
difference.
big difference between those two.
It's a huge difference. It's an entirely different function in the business. There are bookkeepers, there's tax for compliance only filers, which is the majority of the CPA business. But then you have tax strategists, which is a very small percentage of the industry because there's not that many people who actually need strategy, truthfully. But generally, entrepreneurs who are making more than a couple $100,000 a year and might have some real estate need a written strategic plan. And so getting a great resource who will do that. The other thing I would say is, whether you come to Alchemy or not, like you've got to help your CPA help you. Like in January, for example, we release what's called the annual tax organizer, which is where you're supposed to tell us all the stuff you never told us all year long. Well, if you don't fill that out till July, then how are we supposed to, right? So it is a part.
Feeling really called out right now, Brandon. Like,
I'm calling out about, I don't know, 75% of the people that might be listening to this call
I
right
would have
now.
said 90. Yeah, I would have said
Okay,
90.
90%. I was being generous. So, so it's like okay, so it is a partnership, and so there's the business owner, whether you're a rainmaker, you're on a team, or you're a W-2 employee, you are the taxpayer, has to take full responsibility for this and work with your firm or whomever to develop a great strategy and to get things happening in a proactive manner so that you're not paying too much in taxes, so that you're not paying penalties and interest, and so you don't have a big surprise. I remember one year I thought I'd finally gotten my act together after being audited and being behind in taxes. And my CPA called me like in early March. He's like, "Oh yeah, you owe another 50 grand." I'm like in a week. I was like, "Oh, well, I don't have 50 grand today." Right. So that was a really difficult thing. So all of that is around proactivity, creating a schedule where you're meeting with your CPA a couple times a year and doing planning in the summer.
That's huge, right? And I talk to a lot of rainmakers who've got team members and they say, so and so's leaving the team. I'm like, well, what happened, right? Or why are they saying they might need to leave the team? And I'm like, well, they need more money. And I'm like, hang on, didn't I see that they made like $200,000 so far this year?
Yeah.
What do you mean they need more money? And I'll
Yeah.
tell you, it's not a infrequent thing that the reason on why they need more money is because they made so much money and then they didn't pay any taxes and they didn't have
Yes.
any strategy. And now Uncle Sam has come calling and they need more money because they spent all of the income and they didn't actually have a tax strategy to shelter that money and to run their books correctly and do any of these
Yeah.
things that Brandon's talking about. And then
Well,
they end up going to get a job making
yeah.
less money, but where the taxes are naturally taken out. And we lose
Yeah.
good team members because of bad financials on their part.
I mean, I almost had to leave the industry. I mean, I got in quick. I did 12 million my first year, 20 million my second year, 30 million my third year, and in year 3, I was like, "Wait a minute. Do I need to file taxes?" So not only had I not filed, I had certainly not paid anything. And I was like, "This is great. This business is amazing. There's so much cash." And I was like, "Oh, right." And I had a
Until there's not. Yeah.
no, there was not, and I was like, "Oh, no, wait, no, 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 like, this is not how I thought it was," and I had to reorient myself, which took another couple few years. So, yes, I think the more we can help each other, uh, come to this conversation as an organization, the better off we're gonna be because this is not in the minority. Like most people in our industry are dealing with one version or another of this topic, and we really need to help each other.
Yeah. I think it's good for coaches to bring their clients. That's why
Yes.
we're bringing it to all of you, right? For rainmakers to have this discussion with their team
Yeah.
members. Like
Yeah.
if you've got 1099 people, one of the conversations you should be having on a quarterly basis is, how are you doing on paying your taxes? What's your
Correct.
tax strategy? Do you need a bookkeeper?
Correct.
Frequently, like, I mean, a lot of people, and I mean, I talk to people who make millions of dollars a year in commission income, right?
Yes.
Brandon or people like him exist. They're like, wait, what? I
Yep.
that exists? Oh, and by the way, it's affordable,
Hmm.
right? Like it's insane. We need to expose people to that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, number four.
Number four. So I had a really good financial mentor early on, luckily. And I remember one afternoon I called him up and I was giving him my new goals for the year. I think at the time it was like $50 million dollars in volume and all these units. And I was like so excited about it. And he goes, "Oh, okay. Well, good luck with that." And I was like, "Oh, a little enthusiasm would be nice." You know, he's like, "Look, I appreciate your volume in units. I don't even know what that is, but whatever. I don't think that has any relation to how you're doing financially." I was like, What do you mean by that? Tell me more." He goes, "Try this on for size. I want you to start to reimagine a win in business around profitability and net worth. So when you call me next time, don't report to me your units and volume, because as far as I'm concerned, you can't really do anything with that stuff. Report to me what your net worth is. Report to me what your net profit is. Start to measure that and have that conversation. I don't really care about your units and volume in GCI. Anyway, I'll see you next week." And I was like, "Oh, whoa." So, but it was a pop in the nose just at the right time for me. And I share that because I see this throughout our industry that the agents who are succeeding financially are measuring their profit and net worth. I mean, what is it? What you measure actually improves, generally speaking. Like, so it's not really a surprise, but we're so used to the vanity metrics of, my
Of
gold
what
platinum
success looks
medallion.
like.
I'm like,
Mhm.
woohoo, right? But no, no, no. Let's reorient success to profitability and net worth in business. And I think we'll have an entirely different experience. And that is my number four.
Ooh, I like it. So profitability, right? Actually making sure our business is making money to
Hmm.
do these things. And with that being said, there's months that you might not, right? Like
Yes.
there's months you might get caught off guard. There's months that the markets may shift and it takes you a little while to catch up. One, there's a reason you'll get reserves, right? You have reserves. Two, it shouldn't be the norm to not be, right? Like it happens. Yeah, but it shouldn't be the norm. And to Brandon's point is, are we actually measuring it and is that what we're rating as success? Like, or are we
Yep.
just here for the flashy numbers because our ego loves it? And don't get me wrong, my ego loves to feel seen too. It loves
Ew.
it. Does it? We all do. And that doesn't help the back end of your business. It doesn't help your wealth. It doesn't help your bank account. It doesn't help your legacy. It doesn't help
Yeah.
your family fund. It doesn't help any of those things. Units and volume only do so much at the end of the day if there's no profitability behind it.
So what do you have to do to change the conversation with the people around you to profit? It may be you don't know what your profit is and you need to go to get a profit and loss statement. And maybe you have one, but you've never looked at it. And maybe you've looked at it, but don't really understand it. Or maybe you looked at it, understand it, but it's not accurate. It's not reconciled. I mean, there's a lot of things in there that get us to this place of measuring success through profit. I remember immediately I was like, well, I need to look at my P&L every month. So I sit down on, or every week. So I sit down on Friday at noon and I log in. I'm like, where is my P&L? Right. And then I finally dig it out of my trash folder. And I was like, oh,
Spam.
yeah. I was like, I don't even know how to read this sucker. So I did not have the tools at the time to even have a conversation about profit. So whoop, that sent me on a little bit of a journey there. I was like, well, somebody's got to walk me through this. Like, what does this stuff even mean? So it's easy to say have a conversation around profitability, but there's probably a million little things you've got to do in order to be in a position where that can be happening. And back to our earlier point, break those. It may be a big goal for you to have that conversation productively. What are the small steps you need to take in the next month to be one step closer to having that powerful conversation?
That's huge. All right. We have 5 minutes left
Okay, five
and
minutes
we're off
left.
to number five.
Number
Yes. Give
five
us number five.
is, and this, by the way, is number five for a reason. This is not where we start. This is where we get to eventually, and that is people who are doing well. They are following the budget model. Now, I know. Don't hang up. Don't close this. But for those of you who heard the word budget and you rolled your eyes, I'm actually talking to you. So, so you eventually have exactly, Liz, right? You eventually have to get to a point where you have and follow a budget. Now you're going to ebb and flow with this in life. Some businesses will do better with budgets. Some periods of time you'll do better with budgets than not. But never give up the pursuit of working with a budget within your business and do what's required over time to get to the place where you can operate like that. Let's imagine you've got a big wealth goal. Find somebody in your world who has a similar net worth than you, and I'll bet that person is operating to some degree or maybe to a large degree on a budget, right? If you're like, I want a 10, 20, 30, $40 million net worth, you're not going to find any of those people that don't have a business budget and possibly even a personal budget. So, budgeting, which is not the first thing you start with, but it is something that you eventually have to get to in order to really move this needle financially.
I think that's such a good one to talk about because none of us like a budget, right? We all just want to spend the way we want to
Yeah.
spend business and do all the things. But the first part about getting a budget is actually just being aware of what you're spending,
Yes.
right? Like being aware of what we're spending. And I'll tell you, I look at my credit cards that I put things on every day. I look at my bank accounts every day. I look at my tax or my portfolios every day. Like this is how I start my morning. And I'm not
Yeah,
saying I'm going through it with a fine tooth comb.
I do too.
And I look at it every day. But here's the thing that I will tell everybody on this screen. I still constantly find things that I'm like, what's that?
What is
What
that?
what
Yep.
is that? And how often have I been paying that
Mm.
19.99 reoccurring subscription? Oh, since
Yeah.
2017. And I've not even had that app on my phone since then. I'm just like,
Uh-huh.
what? How does this happen? Right? Like
Yep.
we would be shocked, right? Even what we spend and just having an awareness around it, I think comes as part of that journey of deciphering budget and putting ourselves in relation to a budget and then obviously our business budget that we're going to follow, and there are models for that, right? There
Turns
are
out there are.
models for that. Yeah, turns
Yes.
out turns out we have those, and I'm sure Brandon can give us eons of insights about best practices and things he's seen how they change during the shifted market of what happened to cost of sale, what happened to expenses. I heard him say a really interesting one last year. It was probably May masterminds last year. You pulled up and you analyzed a bunch of P&Ls from businesses, and you said what's interesting is the budgets. Here's what's changed, and what's also interesting is here's what didn't go down as revenue continued to go down, right?
Yes.
And he looked
Yes.
at what didn't adjust. What did we were we not willing to
Yeah.
change that we probably should have, right? Because
Yeah. At
we
the
we
time, it
weren't
was,
willing to.
I remember that. It was compensation, right?
Hmm.
People were not making the difficult personnel decisions that they needed as their business was shrinking. And we know now that did not play out well for a lot of folks. So
No.
yeah, all that information is sitting there in the numbers.
Yeah. And if you've got good books, that helps you see it.
Yeah.
So here's what I will leave with you, and then we will go for his last words of wisdom that he will leave with you. Especially for those of you that are rainmakers, or you have a business, or you work closely with people. Nobody starts their first day in real estate or their first day in business and is like, I'm a tax expert and I'm a bookkeeping expert and I have everything together and I have a plan. But what if they did? Especially the people that you hire. What if they did? What if that was part of the education you brought to the table? Even something as simple as, hey, I watched this interview with this guy from some company called Alchemy of Money yesterday, and it was 30 minutes long, but I think it'd be great for you to watch as you enter into being a real estate agent to understand what some of the back end here looks like, right? Something so small can be pivotal changes for the way your team members have a relationship with their money, the way they run their books, that keeps them there with you longer,
Yeah.
right? People who are living their best life, making money, love the culture where they're at, they don't leave to go get a job because they're not doing well. In turn, they're like, I would bleed for this company because this company and the people who run it have helped me accumulate more wealth and more understanding and put me in a better point of life than anyone ever has. And so you all have the power to do that with very simple, small things. Take care of yourself and take care of your people. Don't forget about them on your journey here. So those are my words of wisdom for you as we will leave you with. Brandon, the floor is yours. Wrap us up. What do you want to leave everybody with?
We're not aiming for perfection here. We're looking for progress. So see what can you do in the next 30 days that is going to be progress in your financial life, and that would absolutely be a win.
Awesome. All right. Well, Brandon, first of all, Brandon and I have been trying to get this interview on the book since like November of last year.
Yeah,
So I'm very happy we finally got it. We were able to run this for our people.
it is.
Secondly, for everybody that is there, if you need anything, here's how you can reach Brandon.
Alchemyofmoney.co. That's alchemyofmoney.co is our website.
Perfect. So if you have questions, you're thinking of, do I need to switch my bookkeeper? Do I even I don't have one yet, or is this just even the right place? You want to learn a little bit more? I can tell you, I've got multiple clients that use Brandon and Alchemy of Money for their books, and he's a magician, super smart, and understands from the inside out what our businesses are like. And not everybody can say that, right? Not a lot of people can actually say that. And so it's super cool what they've done and what they've built and how they're helping people to measure the results and adjust their activities to live a big life with their business. So thank you all for being here. We will send this recording out to those of you that were here, as well as along with Brandon's information in that email for you. I look forward to seeing you all on our next expert interview. Brandon, thank you so much. Have a great
Thank you,
day.
Liz.